The morning sunlight filtered through the lace curtains of Clara and Liam's modest yet charming home. Nestled on the outskirts of a quiet town, their house stood as a symbol of their supposed perfection, neat, warm, and welcoming. Liam had built it himself, brick by brick, years before, pouring not just his skill but his heart into every corner. Clara often joked that their home was like a storybook come to life, just like their marriage. To their neighbors, Clara and Liam were the kind of couple others aspired to be. Clara was a beloved school teacher, her kind smile and nurturing presence making her a favorite among students and parents alike. Liam, a successful contractor, was known for his honesty and dedication. Together, they seemed unshakable. A team that weathered life's storms and came out stronger every time. But beneath the polished surface of their life was something intangible, something neither of them acknowledged. Liam was consumed by his work, often staying late to meet deadlines or to oversee projects. Clara, meanwhile, felt the weight of a routine that had become stifling. On this particular morning, as Clara prepared breakfast, Liam sat at the dining table scanning emails on his phone. The clinking of plates and the smell of fresh coffee filled the room, but there was a distance between them that neither wanted to address. "You'll be late for school if you don't hurry," Liam said, glancing up. Clara smiled faintly. "And you'll miss your meeting if you keep staring at your phone." They laughed, a fleeting moment of warmth that quickly dissolved into silence. Clara looked out the kitchen window as Liam gathered his things and kissed her cheek before leaving. It was a perfect life, or so it seemed. But in the corners of Clara's mind, a restless yearning stirred, and she found herself wondering if this was all there was to her story. The cracks in their perfect picture were invisible to the outside world. But soon, those cracks would widen into fractures, and the life they had so carefully built would come crashing down in ways neither of them could have imagined. Clara sat at her desk in the classroom, the sunlight streaming through the windows doing little to brighten her mood. The children had just left for recess, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Normally, she would savor these quiet moments, grading papers or sipping her tea. But today she felt suffocated. The restlessness had been building for months, a dull ache in the background of her seemingly perfect life. She loved Liam, at least she thought she did. But something was missing. The routine of their days, the predictability of their conversations, the absence of spark. It all weighed on her. At first, she dismissed it as a phase, something that came with the territory of a long-term relationship. But the feeling lingered, creeping into her thoughts during the quiet moments. She found herself longing for something she couldn't quite name. Excitement, passion, a sense of being truly alive. That evening, as she scrolled through her phone on the couch, an ad popped up for an anonymous online chat app. It promised discretion, connection, and a way to meet like-minded individuals for meaningful conversations. Clara hesitated, her finger hovering over the download button. She wasn't looking for an affair. She wasn't that kind of person. But the idea of talking to someone new, someone who didn't know her as Liam's wife or the town's favorite teacher, was tempting. Before she could overthink it, she downloaded the app. Her heart raced as she created a profile, carefully crafting her username and choosing a generic photo that revealed nothing. She told herself it was harmless, a way to escape the monotony, to feel a little thrill without actually doing anything wrong. The first few messages were mundane, from strangers looking for casual flirtation or meaningless small talk. Clara was about to delete the app when a message caught her attention. "You don't seem like the type to be here. What are you running from?" The words sent a jolt through her. She glanced at the username, Wanderer. Something about the directness intrigued her. She typed back, her fingers trembling slightly, "And what makes you think I'm running?" The reply came almost instantly. "Because I am too." Clara stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She had no idea that this simple conversation would ignite a chain of events that would unravel everything she thought she knew about herself, her marriage, and the life she had built. Over the following days, Clara found herself drawn to Wanderer. Their conversations were unlike anything she had experienced before. Effortless, intriguing, and charged with a subtle intensity. While Liam's words were often functional and routine, Wanderers were curious, probing, and layered with wit. They talked about everything and nothing. He asked about her favorite childhood memories, her dreams, and the moments that had shaped her into the person she was today. In turn, he shared stories of his own, painting himself as a restless soul searching for meaning in an otherwise ordinary life. Clara knew it was wrong to feel so connected to someone she had never met, but the anonymity made it easy to justify. She convinced herself it was harmless, just words on a screen. She wasn't meeting him in person or crossing any real lines. Yet, she found herself looking forward to their conversations more than she anticipated. She began checking her phone during breaks at work, smiling at his messages as though they were secret treasures. One evening, Wanderer asked a question that lingered in Clara's mind long after the conversation ended. If you could have one thing in life without consequences, what would it be? Clara stared at the question, her thoughts swirling. What did she want? Adventure? Passion? Freedom? She typed back a cautious response. To feel alive. His reply was immediate and simple. I can give you that. The words made her heart race. For the first time in years, she felt noticed, seen in a way that Liam hadn't in a long time. But with that thrill came a flicker of guilt. She closed the app and set her phone down, determined to forget about the conversation. But later that night, lying in bed next to Liam, she realized she couldn't stop thinking about Wanderer. His words played on a loop in her mind, filling the quiet darkness with a tantalizing promise. Clara had no idea who Wanderer really was or how entangled their lives were about to become. For now, she clung to the illusion that this connection was nothing more than an innocent escape. But the truth was far more complicated and dangerous than she could imagine. Clara's chats with Wanderer became a daily ritual, a secret she carried with her like a forbidden treasure. They shared more details about their lives, skirting the edges of truth without fully revealing themselves. Clara avoided questions that felt too personal, while Wanderer remained shrouded in mystery, his allure growing with each exchange. One evening, after several weeks of chatting, Wanderer dropped a bombshell that shook Clara to her core. We've met before, you know? Clara's heart skipped a beat. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard before she managed to type a response. What do you mean? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Her mind raced. Who could he be? A colleague? A parent of one of her students? The thought of someone she knew being behind the screen sent a wave of panic through her. Tell me, she replied, her curiosity outweighing her fear. After a long pause, his reply appeared. I'm closer to your life than you think. Maybe too close. Clara's stomach churned. She wanted to press for more, but something about his tone stopped her. She ended the conversation abruptly, telling herself she needed space to think. The next morning, she couldn't shake the unease. Every face she passed in the hallways, every interaction at work, felt like a potential clue. Her paranoia grew, and by the time she got home that evening, she was a bundle of nerves. Unable to resist, she reopened the app and sent a message. Who are you really? This time, his response was immediate. You already know me, Clara. Her breath caught. The use of her name felt like a slap, shattering the illusion of anonymity. How did he know? Before she could process, another message came through. Look at Liam's photos from last summer. You'll see me there. With trembling hands, Clara opened her phone's gallery. Scrolling through the pictures of their barbecue parties and vacations, she paused on a group photo from last August. Liam stood in the center, smiling broadly, surrounded by his colleagues and friends. And there he was, Wanderer. Her blood turned cold as she recognized Alex, one of Liam's closest colleagues and confidants. He had been in their home, shared meals with them, laughed with them, and all the while he had been the stranger on the other side of her screen. Clara felt a sickening mix of fear and exhilaration. The connection she had felt wasn't imagined. It was real, but now it carried a dangerous new weight. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers, but deep down, she knew the lines between right and wrong were already blurred. And as much as she wanted to deny it, the discovery of his identity only made the pull stronger. Clara was stepping into a storm she couldn't control, and the worst was yet to come. The revelation of Wanderer's identity should have been a wake-up call, A moment of clarity that pushed Clara to end the conversations and delete the app. But instead, it had the opposite effect. Now, every message from Alex felt more charged, more forbidden. The danger of their connection only heightened the thrill. At first, Clara hesitated to respond to Alex after discovering who he was. Days passed without a word, but the silence was unbearable. She felt his absence like a hollow ache, her curiosity and longing overpowering her guilt. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked. Alex replied almost instantly, "Would you have kept talking to me if I had?" She didn't know how to answer. He was right, she likely wouldn't have. But now that she knew, the pull was undeniable. Their conversations took on a new intimacy. No longer strangers, they began speaking of moments they had shared in real life. The fleeting glances across the table at Liam's barbecues. The accidental brushes of their hands as they passed dishes. Clara began to see those moments in a new light, questioning whether Alex had always harbored feelings for her. One night, after several glasses of wine, Clara let her guard down entirely. "I can't stop thinking about you," she typed, her hands trembling. "Then don't," Alex replied. "You don't have to pretend anymore. Not with me." The emotional affair quickly deepened into something more. They started meeting in secret, using the guise of casual run-ins or errands to steal moments alone. It wasn't long before their connection became physical. A stolen kiss in a secluded park, hands lingering too long in the dark corners of their world. Clara told herself it was harmless, that Liam would never find out. But every time she returned home, the guilt gnawed at her. She would lie awake at night, staring at Liam as he slept peacefully beside her, wondering how she had let things spiral so far out of control. Alex, on the other hand, seemed emboldened by their affair. He spoke of their connection as something inevitable, something that couldn't be denied. He whispered promises of a future where they could be together openly, free from the constraints of their current lives. But Clara wasn't ready to make such a leap. She couldn't imagine a world where she shattered Liam's life, their marriage, and their reputation. She wanted to believe she could keep both worlds separate, that she could have Alex without losing everything else. What Clara didn't realize was that Liam wasn't as oblivious as she thought. He had begun to notice the subtle shifts in her behavior. The way she lingered over her phone, the new spark in her eyes that wasn't for him. And while Clara was entangled in her affair with Alex, Liam was quietly piecing together the truth. He didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, he watched and waited, his mind already turning toward revenge. What Clara believed was a secret would soon unravel in ways more devastating than she could ever imagine. The game she thought she controlled was about to take a deadly turn. Liam had always prided himself on his intuition. It was what made him successful in business, knowing when something wasn't quite right and acting on it. And now, that same instinct was screaming at him that Clara was hiding something. At first, he dismissed the feeling as paranoia. Clara had always been faithful, hadn't she? But the small changes in her behavior began to pile up. The guarded way she looked at her phone, the sudden need for space, the distant way she responded to his questions. One evening, while Clara was in the shower, Liam decided to follow his gut. Her phone was on the bedside table, unlocked. He hesitated for a moment, his conscience warring with his suspicions. But then, the thought of being played for a fool spurred him into action. He opened her messaging app and scrolled. At first, there was nothing, just conversations with friends and colleagues. But then he noticed an unfamiliar app, one he hadn't seen her use before. His heart pounded as he opened it. What he found made his blood run cold. The messages between Clara and Alex were all there. Every flirtation, every admission of longing, every detail of their secret meetings. Liam's hands shook as he read, his anger building with every word. But it wasn't just anger he felt. It was humiliation. Alex wasn't just anyone. He was someone Liam considered a friend, someone he had trusted. The betrayal cut deep, but Liam wasn't the type to lash out impulsively. He was methodical, calculating. Instead of confronting Clara right away, he began to plan. He would make them both pay, not just for the affair but for the insult of thinking they could deceive him. The next morning, Liam acted as if nothing had happened. He kissed Clara on the cheek, wished her a good day at work, and even made plans for dinner that evening. Clara smiled, seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing beneath his calm demeanor. Over the next few days, Liam gathered evidence. He didn't just want to catch them, he wanted to destroy them. He took screenshots of the messages, tracked Clara's movements, and even placed a small recording device in her car. What he discovered was worse than he had imagined. Their affair wasn't just emotional or physical. It was brazen. They had mocked him in their messages, calling him blind and too busy to notice. Every insult fueled Liam's rage, but he kept it contained, knowing his time for revenge would come. Liam wasn't just planning to expose them. He was planning to make sure they felt the full weight of their betrayal. And when the time came, he would make sure they never forgot what they had done to him. The perfect storm was building, and Clara and Alex had no idea they were walking straight into it. Liam chose his moment carefully. It was a Friday evening, a night when Clara had told him she'd be working late at school. He knew better. The messages he intercepted earlier that day made it clear she was meeting Alex at a secluded spot they often frequented. Instead of reacting immediately, Liam played the role of the oblivious husband. He kissed Clara goodbye, told her to drive safely, and even texted her later to ask if she needed anything from the store. Meanwhile, he was already parked near their rendezvous spot, hidden in the shadows. He watched as Clara's car pulled in and Alex followed shortly after. They didn't even bother hiding their affection. Liam's stomach churned as he saw them embrace and kiss under the dim glow of the streetlight. It took every ounce of restraint for Liam to stay put. But this wasn't the moment for rage. He wanted something more than a heated argument. He wanted to utterly dismantle their world. When Clara returned home later that night, her cheeks flushed and her excuses rehearsed, Liam was waiting for her in the living room. "Hey," she said casually, dropping her bag on the floor. "How was your evening?" Liam's expression didn't shift. He simply stared at her, his eyes cold and unblinking. "Do you love him?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with steel. Clara froze, her heart stopping mid-beat. "What? You heard me." Liam stood, his imposing frame towering over her. "Do you love him, Clara? Or is it just the thrill of sneaking around?" Clara's mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation, a lie, anything that could undo the damage. But the look in Liam's eyes told her it was too late. He knew everything. "Liam, she stammered. "Don't bother." He cut her off, his voice sharper now. "I've read the messages. I know where you've been, who you've been with, and how long this has been going on." Clara's face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "I trusted you, Clara," Liam continued, his tone growing darker. "And you threw it all away. For what? For him." Tears welled in Clara's eyes. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "I didn't mean to hurt you." Liam laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Well, congratulations. You succeeded." Clara reached out to him, but he stepped back, his jaw tightening. "Don't," he warned. "You've already taken enough from me. But this is just the beginning." Clara's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Liam didn't answer. Instead, he walked past her, his movements deliberate and menacing. Before she could gather herself, the front door slammed shut, leaving Clara alone with the weight of what she had done, and the chilling realization that Liam wasn't going to let this go. What she didn't know was that Liam wasn't just planning to make her pay. He was going to take down Alex, too, in a way neither of them would ever forget. The game had begun, and Liam was already several steps ahead. The days following the confrontation were eerily quiet. Liam returned home late from work, spoke little, and avoided Clara as much as possible. To an outsider, it might have seemed like a man licking his wounds, retreating into himself after the betrayal. But inside, Liam's mind was a battlefield of calculated plans. He began with Alex. It wasn't enough to ruin his personal life. Liam wanted to destroy his career, his reputation, and his peace of mind. Alex worked as a project manager at the same contracting company where Liam was a senior partner. They weren't just colleagues. Alex had relied on Liam's mentorship to rise through the ranks. Liam knew Alex's weaknesses. His habit of bending company rules, fudging expense reports, and taking shortcuts on projects. For years, Liam had turned a blind eye to these indiscretions. But now, they were ammunition. First, Liam began compiling evidence. He dug through old emails, project files, and financial records. Every discrepancy, every corner Alex had cut, Liam documented with meticulous detail. By the time he was finished, he had a damning portfolio that painted Alex as reckless and unethical. Next, he turned to their boss, Mr. Harrington, a man who valued loyalty and integrity above all else. Liam arranged a private meeting under the pretense of discussing company operations. Instead, he presented the evidence against Alex, framing it as a necessary step to protect the company's reputation. Harrington was furious. By the end of the meeting, Alex was suspended pending a full investigation, his future with the company hanging by a thread. But Liam wasn't done. He wanted Alex to feel the weight of betrayal as deeply as he had. That evening, Liam anonymously mailed the same evidence to Alex's wife, Sarah. He included a letter typed on a plain sheet of paper, detailing not only Alex's professional misconduct but also his affair with Clara. The letter was brutally honest, sparing no detail. The next morning, Liam watched from his truck as Alex's house erupted into chaos. Sarah stood on the front porch, shouting, her face red with anger. Alex followed her, pleading, but she shoved him away. A suitcase landed at his feet, followed by a barrage of clothes and personal items. Liam smiled grimly. One piece of his revenge had fallen into place. Now it was Clara's turn. He didn't want to destroy her in the same way. That would be too easy. Instead, Liam wanted her to feel trapped, to watch her life crumble around her while she bore the full weight of her choices. He had already laid the groundwork, gathering evidence and waiting for the right moment to strike. Clara was still in the dark, believing Liam's silence was a sign of resignation. She had no idea the storm that was about to descend on her life. For Liam, this wasn't just revenge, it was justice, and he was only getting started. Clara grew uneasy in the silence. Liam's coldness was suffocating, but she was too afraid to push him. She told herself he needed time, that he'd eventually forgive her or at least move on. Little did she know, Liam was carefully orchestrating her downfall. He started with subtle manipulations. Over the next few days, he encouraged her to attend social gatherings and community events, places where their friends and neighbors would be present. He even insisted on coming along, feigning normalcy to mask his true intentions. At one such event, a charity dinner, Liam casually introduced Clara to a few unfamiliar faces, some of them high-profile individuals in the town. Clara found it odd that he was so friendly and accommodating after weeks of tension. One of the men, a local journalist named Eric, seemed particularly interested in Liam's stories about his work and community ties. What Clara didn't know was that Liam had already fed Eric a carefully constructed narrative about the affair, framing himself as the wronged husband while dropping just enough hints to make it irresistible as a newsworthy scandal. But the most intricate part of Liam's trap was yet to come. He arranged a business trip for himself, leaving Clara alone for a weekend. Or so it seemed. In reality, Liam wasn't leaving town at all. He had hired a private investigator to follow Clara's movements and document everything. Alex, despite his own unraveling life, couldn't resist reaching out to Clara. She tried to resist meeting him, fearing Liam might still be watching, but Alex's desperation won her over. "Just one last time," Alex begged over the phone. "I need to see you." Clara agreed, convinced they could meet discreetly and avoid suspicion. They chose a remote motel on the edge of town, believing it would offer privacy. Unbeknownst to them, Liam had already planted the idea in the investigator's mind to follow Alex closely. He knew Alex would lead him straight to Clara. As Clara and Alex checked into the motel, the investigator snapped photos from a distance. They captured every incriminating detail: their embrace in the parking lot, their entry into the room, and the hours they spent inside. Liam wasn't just content with having proof of their affair. He wanted it exposed on his terms. He waited patiently for the investigator to deliver the evidence, each image and report fueling his resolve. When the investigator handed him the final file, Liam's lips curled into a grim smile. The pieces were in place. It was time to set the final stage of his plan into motion, one that would not only humiliate Clara and Alex but make them pariahs in their community. The trap had been sprung, and there was no escaping what came next. Liam chose a town event to unveil his revenge, a weekend block party celebrating local businesses. The entire community would be there, including Clara and Alex, who were still oblivious to the storm brewing around them. The event was lively, with music, food stalls, and laughter filling the air. Liam arrived early, mingling with neighbors and ensuring everything was in place. He carried a USB drive containing the damning evidence, the photos from the motel, screenshots of Clara and Alex's messages, and even the investigator's detailed report. At the center of the event was a large outdoor screen set up to showcase a slideshow of community achievements. It was meant to be a light-hearted part of the evening, highlighting milestones and memories. Liam had offered to help with the technical setup, a gesture that was warmly accepted. As the slideshow began, people gathered around, clapping and laughing at photos of local events, charity drives, and business milestones. Clara stood among the crowd, her unease momentarily forgotten as she chatted with friends. Alex lingered nearby, keeping a safe distance to avoid suspicion. Then, without warning, the screen flickered. The images changed abruptly, and the crowd fell silent. The first photo appeared, Clara and Alex at the motel, their embrace unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the audience. "What is this?" someone whispered. More images followed, Clara and Alex entering the motel room, text messages filled with flirtation and promises, and finally, a report summarizing their affair. Each slide was like a blow, unraveling the carefully curated facade of Clara's life. Clara froze, her face draining of color. Her heart pounded as whispers and murmurs grew louder around her. She turned to Liam, who stood at the back of the crowd, his expression calm but cold. "Liam," she croaked, her voice barely audible. He stepped forward, his voice carrying over the stunned silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, I thought it was time the truth came out," he said, his tone icy. "Meet my wife, Clara, and my so-called friend, Alex." The crowd turned to Clara, their faces a mix of shock, pity, and judgment. Clara's legs felt like they might give out beneath her. Alex, pale and visibly shaken, tried to speak, but the crowd's whispers drowned him out. "This wasn't just about betrayal," Liam continued. "It's about the lies, the disrespect, and the complete disregard for the people they've hurt. You all deserve to know who they really are." Clara couldn't breathe. The weight of everyone's eyes on her was unbearable. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her feet refused to move. The whispers turned to murmurs of disgust. Friends turned their backs on her, and even strangers glared with disdain. Alex slipped away, unable to face the fallout. Liam, satisfied with the chaos he had unleashed, turned and walked away. He didn't need to stay and witness the aftermath. He had already won. Clara stood alone in the crowd, her world crumbling around her. Liam's revenge was complete, and the life she had once known was gone forever. But Liam wasn't finished yet. This was only the public face of his retribution. The next step would cut even deeper, leaving Clara and Alex to face the true cost of their betrayal. The fallout from the block party was swift and merciless. Clara was ostracized by the community, her once pristine reputation in tatters. Parents at the school demanded her resignation, and rumors swirled through the town like wildfire. Alex fared no better. His suspension turned into termination, and his wife, Sarah, filed for divorce within days. Clara tried to reach Liam, desperate for any chance to fix things, but he ignored her calls and texts. She even went to his office, only to be turned away by the receptionist with a sympathetic but firm shake of her head. The silence was deafening. Liam wasn't just punishing her. He was erasing her from his life. Desperate, Clara finally managed to corner him at their house one evening. He had come to gather a few things, his demeanor cold and detached. "Liam, please," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I love you." Liam's laugh was bitter, sharp. "Love? You don't even know what that means." "I made a mistake," she pleaded. "A terrible mistake, but it doesn't erase everything we've built. Don't let this destroy us." He set his bag down and looked her in the eye, his expression unreadable. "Destroy us? Clara, you already did that. I'm just making sure you understand the consequences." "What more do you want from me?" she cried. "You've humiliated me, ruined my life. Isn't that enough?" Liam stepped closer, his voice low and measured. "You took something from me, my trust, my pride, my peace of mind. And now I'm taking everything from you." Clara's stomach churned. "What do you mean?" "You'll see," he said, grabbing his bag and walking out the door without another word. In the following weeks, Liam's plan to dismantle Clara's life became clear. He hired a lawyer to begin divorce proceedings, ensuring the terms would leave her with as little as possible. He froze their joint accounts, forcing her to rely on her meager savings. He even contacted her school board anonymously, providing evidence of her affair to expedite her termination. Clara was left with nothing but a mounting pile of bills and a reputation so tarnished that finding another teaching job was impossible. She turned to Alex for support, but he was in no position to help. His life had been shattered as thoroughly as hers, and he blamed her for the destruction. "You're toxic," he spat during their final meeting. "You've ruined everything. Don't ever contact me again." Clara was truly alone, trapped in a life she no longer recognized. Liam, meanwhile, carried on as though nothing had happened, his calculated revenge leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. But the next phase of his plan would deliver the final, most devastating blow, a betrayal even deeper than the one Clara had inflicted on him. Clara's world had become a relentless storm of isolation and despair. Her once perfect life was now a nightmare she couldn't escape. The divorce proceedings dragged on, each interaction with Liam colder and more brutal than the last. He seemed intent on leaving her with nothing, financially, emotionally, and socially. One evening, as Clara sat alone in the tiny apartment she had rented after selling her car to make ends meet, she received an email from Liam. The subject line simply read, "Final closure." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a video file. For a moment, she hesitated, dreading what it might contain. But her curiosity, and the faint hope that Liam might offer some form of reconciliation, overpowered her fear. She pressed play. The video began with Liam sitting at his desk, a calm yet chilling expression on his face. "Clara," he began, his tone measured and deliberate. "By now, you've seen what happens when you betray the people who trust you. But I wanted to leave you with something to remember. Something that will haunt you as much as your actions have haunted me." The screen cut to footage of Liam at a bar. He was laughing and leaning close to a woman Clara recognized instantly. Sarah, Alex's estranged wife. The next clips were a montage. Liam and Sarah at dinners, walking hand in hand, and, finally, kissing passionately in what appeared to be the same motel Clara had used with Alex. Clara's chest tightened as she watched. The realization hit her like a freight train. Liam had seduced Sarah. He had done it not out of love, but as part of his meticulously crafted revenge. He wasn't just destroying Clara and Alex's lives. He was intertwining their ruins. The video ended with Liam's voice, calm but cutting. "You took everything from me. Now I've taken everything from you. Enjoy the life you chose, Clara." Clara stared at the blank screen, her mind reeling. She felt sick, humiliated, and powerless. Liam had outplayed her in every way, turning her betrayal into a weapon that destroyed not only her but everyone connected to her. She tried calling Liam, desperate to confront him, but he didn't answer. The line between her guilt and anger blurred, leaving her spiraling deeper into despair. Clara was at her breaking point. She had nothing left. No friends, no career, no love. Liam's revenge had been absolute, leaving her to face the devastating consequences of her choices alone. But even in her darkest moment, Clara wasn't ready to give up. She vowed to confront Liam one last time, determined to find some way to make sense of the chaos he had unleashed. Little did she know, Liam still had one final move in his game of retribution. Clara's desperation led her back to the one place she had avoided since the fallout began. Their old home. She needed answers. She needed to confront Liam face to face and demand to know why he had gone to such cruel lengths. She arrived late in the evening, the street quiet and dimly lit. The house looked the same as it always had, yet it felt foreign, as though it belonged to someone else now. Taking a deep breath, Clara knocked on the door. Liam opened it, his expression unreadable. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, he stepped aside, allowing her to enter. "What do you want, Clara?" he asked, his tone cold but calm. "I want to know why," she said, her voice trembling. "Why, Sarah? Why this game? Haven't you done enough?" Liam leaned against the doorframe, his gaze steady. "Enough? You think this is just about getting even, isn't it?" Clara shot back. "You've humiliated me, ruined my life, and destroyed Alex. What more could you possibly want?" Liam's lips curled into a faint, humorless smile. "This was never about just you, Clara. It was about making sure you understood what you destroyed. Our marriage, our trust, the life we built. It's all gone because of your choices. Sarah was just collateral damage." Clara's anger flared. "Collateral damage? You manipulated her. Used her. Just like you used me to make yourself feel better." Liam's expression darkened. "Used you? You were the one who threw away everything for a cheap thrill. I didn't make you cheat, Clara. You did that all on your own." The word stung, but Clara wasn't finished. "You wanted revenge. Fine, you got it. But what now? What do you have left?" Liam straightened, his gaze hardening. "What I have left," he said, his voice low, "is peace of mind. You took everything from me, Clara. I made sure you'd feel the same emptiness I did. And now, I can finally move on." Clara's shoulders slumped as the weight of his words sank in. There was no reasoning with him, no undoing the damage that had been done. But as she turned to leave, Liam's voice stopped her. "One more thing," he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket. "You'll want to open this." Clara hesitated, her heart pounding, before taking the envelope. She tore it open and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. Her eyes widened as she read the contents. A legal notice declaring Liam's intent to claim full ownership of their house and assets, citing the affair as grounds for forfeiture in their divorce settlement. "You can keep your pride, Clara," Liam said, his voice dripping with finality. "But everything else? That belongs to me now." Clara's vision blurred with tears as she stared at him, realizing just how thoroughly he had dismantled her life. Without another word, she turned and walked out, the weight of her choices and Liam's revenge pressing down on her like a crushing tide. For Liam, the game was finally over. For Clara, the nightmare was just beginning. The days following her final confrontation with Liam were a blur of grief, anger, and despair for Clara. The legal notice he handed her was the final blow, confirming that she would lose not only the house but also any claim to their joint savings and assets. The divorce settlement, coupled with her tarnished reputation, left her with nothing. Clara moved into a small, rundown studio apartment on the outskirts of town. It was a far cry from the comfortable life she once knew, but it was all she could afford. She spent her days in silence, replaying the events that had led to her downfall. The betrayal, the affair, and Liam's ruthless revenge. It was a cycle of guilt and regret that she couldn't escape. Meanwhile, Liam seemed to thrive. News spread quickly in their community that he had overcome Clara's betrayal with grace and dignity. He began appearing in public with Sarah, their calculated relationship drawing mixed reactions. Some people viewed it as poetic justice, while others whispered about the cruelty of it all. For Alex, the fallout was equally devastating. With his marriage over and his career in ruins, he left town, seeking anonymity in a distant city. Clara reached out to him once, hoping for some semblance of solidarity, but he didn't respond. She couldn't blame him. After all, They had both destroyed each other's lives. The months dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Clara took odd jobs to pay her bills, her once bright future reduced to mere survival. She avoided the places and people she once held dear, unable to face the judgment and pity in their eyes. Her life was a shadow of what it had been, and she couldn't see a way out. One evening, while cleaning out an old box of belongings, Clara found a photo of her and Liam from their honeymoon. They looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. She stared at it for a long time, tears streaming down her face, before ripping it into pieces. "This isn't who I am anymore," she whispered to herself. Clara realized that while Liam's revenge had destroyed her, it didn't have to define her. She couldn't undo the past, but she could find a way to rebuild, to reclaim her sense of self. It wouldn't be easy, but it was the only path forward. As for Liam, his victory came at a cost. Though he appeared strong and composed to the outside world, the emptiness he claimed to have conquered lingered. His need for revenge had consumed him, leaving him with a hollow satisfaction. He had won the game, but in doing so, he had lost the part of himself that once believed in love and forgiveness. The scars of their choices would remain forever, a testament to how far betrayal and revenge could spiral out of control. Both Clara and Liam were left to grapple with the pieces of their broken lives, each wondering if the price they paid was worth it. Months turned into years, and life moved forward, though not in the ways Clara or Liam had imagined. The storm they had unleashed on each other left scars, but it also paved the way for transformation, though at a heavy cost. For Clara, rebuilding her life became an act of defiance. After months of despair, she enrolled in a local community college to retrain in counseling, driven by a desire to help others navigate the same emotional chaos that had consumed her. Her work was humble at first, assisting at a small nonprofit, but it gave her purpose. Over time, she earned the trust of her clients, finding a new sense of identity and strength in guiding others out of their own darkness. Despite her progress, reminders of her past lingered. On occasion, she would run into familiar faces who regarded her with thinly veiled pity or disdain. But instead of cowering under their judgment, she met their eyes with quiet resolve. She had survived. She wasn't proud of the path that brought her here, but she refused to let it define her future. Liam, on the other hand, discovered that his victory wasn't as fulfilling as he'd imagined. While his life remained outwardly successful, his career flourishing and his relationship with Sarah raising eyebrows and curiosity, he couldn't shake the weight of what he'd done. His revenge had been thorough, but it had also cost him the warmth and connection he once valued. Though Sarah had entered the relationship willingly, she soon grew uneasy with Liam's need for control and his inability to let go of the past. Their bond, born from shared betrayal, lacked the foundation of trust and love. It wasn't long before Sarah ended things, leaving Liam alone in the house he had fought so hard to keep. One day, years after the dust had settled, Clara and Liam crossed paths unexpectedly at a bookstore. Clara was browsing a shelf of self-help books for a workshop she was leading, while Liam wandered aimlessly, searching for something to fill the growing void in his life. Their eyes met, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. The weight of everything they had been to each other, and everything they had done, hung in the air like an unspoken truth. "Clara," Liam said, his voice softer than she remembered. "Liam," she replied, her tone calm but guarded. They stood in silence for a moment before Liam finally spoke. "You look different, happier." Clara smiled faintly. "I am. It wasn't easy, but I found a way forward." Liam nodded, his gaze dropping.
"I'm glad."
"You deserve that." "And you?" Clara asked cautiously. He hesitated, still figuring it out. I thought winning would feel different." Clara studied him, her anger and pain long since dulled into a distant ache. "It's not about winning, Liam. It never was." Liam nodded again, but this time his expression carried the weight of understanding. "You're right." They exchanged a few more words before parting ways, neither looking back. It wasn't reconciliation, and it wasn't closure, not entirely. But it was enough. Enough to remind them both that life continued, even after the darkest of storms. For Clara, it was a step further into the light. For Liam, it was a moment of clarity, the first spark of something resembling hope. And for both of them, it was a reminder that even the most shattered lives could be rebuilt, piece by fragile piece.